Today we are going to continue with Chapter 2. We're going to look at Section 2.2. Section 2.2 is going to have us recognize complementary and supplementary angles. So, complementary angles, what is that? It is going to be two angles whose sum is 90 degrees, or you can think of it as two angles that form a right angle. Because remember, 90 degrees is a right angle. So let's sketch a picture of what I mean. I'm actually going to draw two different pictures here. So we've seen, if my pen will work, we've seen a picture like this in the past. Where there's maybe like angle 1 and angle 2. And so as long as we know that we've got this right angle here, angle 1 and 2, they're two angles. They are forming that entire right angle. So I would say that angle 1 is complementary. And so I kind of abbreviate it as comp to angle 2. Because once again, if I add angle 1 and angle 2 together, it will indeed add up to 90 degrees because of how I have it marked in my picture. Okay, so then another picture I just want to show you, like angle 1 and 2 were connected together. Here I've got a picture. There's like angle 3, and here's angle 4. Okay, so you could technically have two separate angles. And as long as I know that the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4, as long as I know that that adds to 90 degrees, or knowing that I have two angles that'll form a right angle, because that's the case, then I can say that angle 3 is complementary to angle 4. So sometimes the two angles might be connected together. Sometimes they might be two separate angles, but as long as they form that right angle or form 90 degrees, they are complementary. So then the next vocab word is supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are two angles whose sum is 180 degrees. Or we can think of it as two angles that form a straight angle. So if I sketch a diagram, we've seen pictures like this in the past. So I'm going to call this angle 5 and angle 6. Okay, but notice that the only type of angle that you can ever assume from a picture is a straight angle. Angle 5 and angle 6 are forming that straight angle. So that's why I know that angle 5 is supplementary. Sorry, my pen is not cooperating. Is supplementary, and that's how I abbreviate it to angle 6. Okay. Just like our last concept with complementary, we don't necessarily have to have two angles that are absolutely touching one another. So say I have these two angles, angle 7 and angle 8. They might not be connected. However, if I know that the measure of angle 7 plus the measure of angle 8, as long as I know that that adds up to 180 or forms a straight angle, I know that angle 7 is supplementary to angle 8. So it can only be two. I don't want 3 different angles or 4 different angles that form a straight angle or a 90-degree angle. Only 2 that form those are going to be either supplementary or complementary. All right, so we're going to classify each pair of angles as either supplementary, complementary, or neither. So if I'm looking at the diagram on the far left, we've got one angle that's 18 degrees, one angle that's 62 degrees. So let's add those two together and see what number we get. If I add 18 and 62 together, notice that we end up with an 80-degree angle. And so because those two add up to 80, this case would be a neither type situation. It's not complementary and it's not supplementary, so it's neither. If we look at the two angles in the middle, 38 degrees and 52 degrees, let's add those together. And notice that by adding them, we end up with 90 degrees. So 2 angles that add up to 90, we would call these angles complementary. Okay, and then in this last diagram on the right, 55 and 125, if we add those two together, notice that we end up with 180 degrees. So that tells us that these two angles are supplementary. All right, now let's use this diagram, which has a lot more angles, to first identify all supplementary angles, and then second, to identify all complementary angles. So remember, supplementary means that we're dealing with angles that form a straight angle, but it can only be 2 angles that form a straight angle. So hopefully we notice that there are actually several straight angles in this diagram. But if we look, angle 1 and angle 2, together those two angles form a straight angle. So angle 1 and angle 2, well, that's a pair of supplementary angles. If I look on the other side, angle 1 and angle 6, they look like they're forming a straight angle as well. Because remember, straight angles, something that we can assume from a diagram. So I would say that angle 1 and angle 6 are supplementary because 2 angles that form a straight angle are supplementary. There is another straight angle down here, but look at it's 6, 5, 4, and 3. It takes all 4 of those angles to form that straight angle. So that would not be considered supplementary because only 2 angles need to add up to form 180 or a straight angle to be supplementary. So those are the only 2 pairs of supplementary angles in this picture. Now, if I want to identify all complementary angles, so remember, complementary angles are 2 angles that form 90 degrees or a right angle. Well, notice that in this diagram, I see this box, and that box indicates a 90-degree angle. Notice that angle 5 and angle 4 are inside of that, forming a straight angle. So angle 5 and angle 4 are definitely complementary angles. Now, while we cannot assume that we have right angles, if we think about this for a second, I'm going to highlight it. This straight angle right here has, if I look at the bottom, it's made up of the angles 5, 4, 3, and 2. We know based off of what we just talked about that that box tells us that 5 and 4, those together form 90 degrees. A straight angle is 180 degrees. So if these 2 angles add up to 90, that means over here on this side, these 2 angles of 3 and 2, they are also going to have to add up to 90 because 90 and 90 get us that 180 straight angle. So that means that angle 3 and angle 2 are also complementary angles. There's no other right angles that we can assume from the picture, so we don't have any other pairs to identify as complementary. All right, in this first problem at the top, it says find the measure of angle C if A and C are complementary angles and the measure of angle A is 35 degrees. So remember, complementary means that 2 angles add up to 90. So if I know that angle A plus angle C equal 90, but I'm giving us what the measure of angle A is, well then 35 plus angle C equals 90. Hopefully we're okay. I just have to subtract 35 from 90, and that's going to get me the measure of angle C. 90 minus 35 tells us that that angle has to be a 55-degree angle. Then same idea at the second one. It says find the measure of angle D if angle B and D are supplementary and angle B is 72 degrees. So supplementary means that those 2 angles have to add up to 180 degrees. If the measure of angle B is given to us as a 72-degree angle, I know that in order to get angle D by itself, I am going to subtract 72 from it. So the measure of angle D, 180 minus 72 tells us that that angle has to be 108 degrees. Here we have a problem that says that angle A is supplementary to angle B. So remember, that means that those two have to add up to 180. We know that angle B is complementary to angle C. That means those two have to add up to 90. We're also told that angle C is 30. We want to find the measure of angle A and angle B. So this time, because we're given the measure of angle C, we have to go right back up to that second statement first. So really, the first measure that we're going to be able to find the measure of angle B. Because if B and C are complementary, remember 90 minus then this 30 degrees is going to tell us that the measure of angle B is really a 60-degree angle. And now that I know that angle B is 60 degrees and angle A and angle B are supplementary, I know that to find the measure of angle A, I want to take 180 minus 60. So the measure of angle A gives us a 120-degree angle. Let's look at a couple of word problems. So it says two complementary angles are in the ratio of 3 to 6. We want to find the measure of each. So remember, anytime I have a ratio, I want to think of that as a 3x, and I want to think of this as a 6x. So if we have complementary angles, remember complementary means that two angles add up to 90. That's the equation I'm going to set up. 3x plus 6x has to equal 90. Combine my like terms, we'll get 9x equals 90. We'll divide by 9, and we get a value of x to be 10. So to find the measure of each angle, I know that 3 times 10 is going to get me one angle, and 6 times 10 is going to get me the other. So it looks like we have a 30-degree angle as well as a 60-degree angle. So that's us recognizing complementary and supplementary angles.